Hello friends, I am Sanam and welcome back to your own channel. So let's start today's video. In this video we will see about Nepal. Nepal, Nepali, Nepal, officially the Federal Democratic Republic of Nepal, is a landlocked country in South Asia. It is located mainly in the Himalayas, but also includes parts of the Indo-Gangetic Plain. With an estimated population of 26.4 million, it is 48th largest country by population. It is the 93rd largest country by area. It borders China in the north and India in the south, east and west, while Bangladesh is located within only 27 kilometers (17 miles) of its southeastern tip, and Bhutan is separated from it by the Indian state of Sikkim. Nepal has a diverse geography, including fertile plains, subalpine forested hills, and 8 of the world's 10 tallest mountains, including Mount Everest, the highest point on Earth. Kathmandu is the capital and the largest city. Nepal is a multi-ethnic country with Nepali as the official language. The name, Nepal, is first recorded in texts from the Vedic period of the Indian subcontinent, the era in ancient India when Hinduism was founded, the predominant religion of the country. In the middle of the first millennium BCE, Gautama Buddha, the founder of Buddhism, was born in Lumbini in southern Nepal. Parts of northern Nepal were intertwined with the culture of Tibet. The centrally located Kathmandu Valley is intertwined with the culture of Indo-Aryans, and was the seat of the prosperous newer confederacy known as Nepal Mandala. The Himalayan branch of the ancient Silk Road was dominated by the valley's traders. The cosmopolitan region developed distinct traditional art and architecture. By the 18th century, the Gorkha kingdom achieved the unification of Nepal. The Shah dynasty established the Kingdom of Nepal and later formed an alliance with the British Empire, under its Rana dynasty of premiers. The country was never colonized but served as a buffer state between Imperial China and British India. Parliamentary democracy was introduced in 1951, but was twice suspended by Nepalese monarchs, in 1960 and 2005. The Nepalese Civil War in the 1990s and early 2000s resulted in the establishment of a secular republic in 2008, ending the world's last Hindu monarchy. The Constitution of Nepal, adopted in 2015, affirms Nepal as a secular federal parliamentary republic divided into 7 provinces. Nepal was admitted to the United Nations in 1955, and friendship treaties were signed with India in 1950 and the People's Republic of China in 1960. Nepal hosts the permanent secretariat of the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation (SAARC), of which it is a founding member. Nepal is also a member of the Non-Aligned Movement and the Bay of Bengal Initiative. The military of Nepal is the 5th largest in South Asia. It is notable for its Gurkha history, particularly during the World Wars, and has been a significant contributor to United Nations peacekeeping operations. Before the unification of Nepal, the Kathmandu Valley was known as Nepal Raja. The precise origin of the term Nepal is uncertain. A number of plausible theories are found in religious as well as academic texts. Nepal appears in ancient Indian literary texts dated as far back as the 4th century BC. However, an absolute chronology cannot be established, as even the oldest texts may contain anonymous contributions dating as late as the early modern period. On the other hand, academic attempts to provide a plausible theory suffer from lack of a complete picture of history, and insufficient understanding of linguistics or of relevant Indo-European and Tibeto-Burman languages. According to Hindu mythology, Nepal derives its name from an ancient Hindu sage called Ne, referred to variously as Ne Muni or Nemi. According to Pashupati Purana, as a place protected by Ne, the country in the heart of the Himalayas came to be known as Nepal. According to Nepal Mahatmya, Nemi was charged with protection of the country by Pashupati. According to Buddhist mythology, Manjushri Bodhisattva drained a primordial lake of serpents to create the Nepal Valley and proclaimed that Adi Buddha Ne would take care of the community that would settle it. As the cherished of Ne, the valley would be called Nepal. According to Gopalaraj Vamshavali, the genealogy of ancient Gopala dynasty compiled circa 1380s, Nepal is named after Nipa the cowherd, the founder of the Nepali sign of the Aviras. In this account, the cow that issued milk to the spot, at which Nipa discovered the Jyotirlinga of Pashupatinath upon investigation, was also named Ne. Norwegian Indologist Christian Lassen proposed that Nepala was a compound of Nipa, foot of a mountain, and Ala, short suffix for Alaya, which means abode, and therefore, Nepala meant abode at the foot of the mountain. He considered Ne Muni to be a fabrication. Indologist Sylvain Levi found Lassen's theory untenable but had no theories of his own, only suggesting that either Nawara is a vulgarism of Sanskritic Nepala, or Nepala is Sanskritization of the local ethnic. Levi's view has some support in later works. The idea that Nepal is a polished form of Nuer, the name of the indigenous people of Kathmandu Valley, may be gaining support, but it leaves the question of etymology unanswered. One theory proposes that Nipa is a Tibeto-Burman stem consisting of Ne, cattle, and Pa, keeper, which alludes to the fact that early inhabitants of the valley were Gopalas, cowherds, and Mahispalas, buffalo herds. Suniti Kumar Chatterjee thought that Nepal originated from Tibeto-Burman roots Ne, of uncertain meaning, as multiple possibilities exist, and Pala or Bal, whose meaning is lost entirely. Nepal is of roughly trapezoidal shape, about 800 kilometers (500 miles) long and 200 kilometers (120 miles) wide, with an area of 147,181 square kilometers (56,827 square miles). It lies between latitudes 26 degrees and 31 degrees north, and longitudes 80 degrees and 89 degrees east. Nepal's defining geological processes began 75 million years ago when the Indian Plate, then part of the southern supercontinent Gondwana, began a northeastward drift caused by seafloor spreading to its southwest, and later, south and southeast. Simultaneously, the vast Tethyan-oceanic crust, to its northeast, began to subduct under the Eurasian Plate. These dual processes, driven by convection in the Earth's mantle, both created the Indian Ocean and caused the Indian continental crust eventually to underthrust Eurasia and to uplift the Himalayas. Immediately south of the emerging Himalayas, plate movement created a vast trough that rapidly filled with river-borne sediment and now constitutes the Indo-Gangetic Plain. Nepal lies almost completely within this collision zone, occupying the central sector of the Himalayan arc, nearly one-third of the 2,400 kilometers (1,500 miles) long Himalayas, with a small strip of southernmost Nepal stretching into the Indo-Gangetic Plain and two districts in the northwest stretching up to the Tibetan Plateau. Mount Everest, the highest peak on Earth, lies on the Nepal-China border. Nepal is divided into three principal physiographic belts known as Himal-Pahad-Terai. Himal is the mountain region containing snow and situated in the Great Himalayan Range. It makes up the northern part of Nepal. It contains the highest elevations in the world, including 8,848 meters (29,029 feet) height Mount Everest, Sagarmatha in Nepali, on the border with China. 7 other of the world's 8 Thousanders are in Nepal or on its border with China: Lhotse, Makalu, Choayu, Kangchenjunga, Dhaulagiri, Annapurna and Manaslu. Pahad is the mountain region that does not generally contain snow. The mountains vary from 800 to 4,000 meters (2,600 to 13,100 feet) in altitude, with progression from subtropical climates below 1,200 meters (3,900 feet) to alpine climates above 3,600 meters (11,800 feet). The lower Himalayan range, reaching 1,500 to 3,000 meters (4,900 to 9,800 feet), is the southern limit of this region, with subtropical river valleys and hills alternating to the north of this range. Population density is high in valleys but notably less above 2,000 meters (6,600 feet) and very low above 2,500 meters (8,200 feet), where snow occasionally falls in winter. The southern lowland plains or Terai bordering India are part of the northern rim of the Indo-Gangetic Plain. Terai is the lowland region containing some hill ranges. The plains were formed and are fed by 3 major Himalayan rivers, the Koshi, the Narayani, and the Karnali, as well as smaller rivers rising below the permanent snowline. This region has subtropical to tropical climate. The outermost range of the foothills, called Savalik Hills or Churia Range, cresting at 700 to 1,000 meters (2,300 to 3,280 feet), marks the limits of the Gangetic Plain. However, broad, low valleys called inner Terai valleys, Bitri Terai Upatyaka, lie north of these foothills in several places. The Indian Plate continues to move north relative to Asia at about 50 mm (2.0 in) per year. This makes Nepal an earthquake-prone zone, and periodic earthquakes that have devastating consequences present a significant hurdle to development. Erosion of the Himalayas is a very important source of sediment, which flows to the Indian Ocean. Saptakoshi, in particular, carries huge amount of silt out of Nepal but sees extreme drop in gradient in Bihar, causing severe floods and course changes, and is therefore known as the Sorrow of Bihar. Severe flooding and landslides cause deaths and disease, destroy farmlands and cripple the transport infrastructure of the country during the monsoon season each year. Nepal has 5 climatic zones, broadly corresponding to the altitudes. The tropical and subtropical zones lie below 1,200 meters (3,900 feet), the temperate zone 1,200 to 2,400 meters (3,900 to 7,900 feet), the cold zone 2,400 to 3,600 meters (7,900 to 11,800 feet), the subarctic zone 3,600 to 4,400 meters (11,800 to 14,400 feet), and the Arctic zone above 4,400 meters (14,400 feet). Nepal experiences 5 seasons: summer, monsoon, autumn, winter and spring. The Himalayas block cold winds from Central Asia in the winter and form the northern limits of the monsoon wind patterns. Nepal contains a disproportionately large diversity of plants and animals, relative to its size. Nepal, in its entirety, forms the western portion of the eastern Himalayan biodiversity hotspot, with notable biocultural diversity. The dramatic differences in elevation found in Nepal, 60 meters from sea level in the Terai Plains, to 8,848 meters Mount Everest, result in a variety of biomes. Eastern half of Nepal is richer in biodiversity as it receives more rain, compared to western parts, where Arctic desert-type conditions are more common at higher elevations. Nepal is a habitat for 4.0% of all mammal species, 8.9% of bird species, 1.0% of reptile species, 2.5% of amphibian species, 1.9% of fish species, 3.7% of butterfly species, 0.5% of moth species and 0.4% of spider species. 82, in its 35 forest types and 118 ecosystems, Nepal harbors 2% of the flowering plant species, 3% of pteridophytes and 6% of bryophytes. Nepal's forest cover is 59,624 square kilometers, 23,021 square miles, 40.36% of the country's total land area, with an additional 4.38% of scrubland, for a total forested area of 44.74%, an increase of 5% since the turn of the millennium. In the southern plains, Terai savanna and grasslands ecoregion contains some of the world's tallest grasses as well as sal forests, tropical evergreen forests and tropical riverine deciduous forests. In the lower hills, 700 meters to 2,000 meters, subtropical and temperate deciduous mixed forests containing mostly sal. In the lower altitudes, chilorn and catus, as well as subtropical pine forest dominated by chur pine are common. The middle hills, 2,000 meters to 3,000 meters, are dominated by oak and rhododendron. Subalpine coniferous forests cover the 3,000 meters to 3,500 meters range, dominated by oak, particularly in the west, eastern Himalayan fir, Himalayan pine and Himalayan hemlock. Rhododendron is common as well. Above 3,500 meters in the west and 4,000 meters in the east, coniferous trees give way to rhododendron-dominated alpine shrubs and meadows. The greater one-horned rhinoceros roams the subtropical grasslands of the Terai Plains. Among the notable trees, are the astringent Azadirachta indica, or neem, which is widely used in traditional herbal medicine, and the luxuriant Ficus religiosa, or peepal, which is displayed on the ancient seals of Mohenjo-Daro, and under which Gautam Buddha is recorded in the Pali Canon to have sought enlightenment. Rhododendron is the national flower of Nepal. Most of the subtropical evergreen broad-leaved forest of the lower Himalayan region is descended from the Tethyan tertiary flora. As the Indian plate collided with Eurasia forming and raising the Himalayas, the arid and semi-arid Mediterranean flora was pushed up and adapted to the more alpine climate over the next 40 to 50 million years. The Himalayan biodiversity hotspot was the site of mass exchange and intermingling of the Indian and Eurasian species in the Neogene. 1 mammal species, Himalayan field mouse, 2 each of bird and reptile species, 9 amphibian, 8 fish and 29 butterfly species are endemic to Nepal. Himalayan monal danth, the national bird of Nepal, nests high in the Himalayas. Nepal contains 107 IUCN designated threatened species, 88 of them animal species, 18 plant species and 1 species of fungi or protist group. These include the endangered Bengal tiger, the red panda, the Asiatic elephant, the Himalayan musk deer, the wild water buffalo and the South Asian river dolphin, as well as the critically endangered gharial, the Bengal florican, and the white-rumped vulture, which has become nearly extinct by having ingested the carrion of diclofenac-treated cattle. The pervasive and ecologically devastating human encroachment of recent decades has critically endangered Nepali wildlife. In response, the system of national parks and protected areas, first established in 1973 with the enactment of National Parks and Wildlife Conservation Act 1973, was substantially expanded. Vulture restaurants coupled with a ban on veterinary usage of diclofenac has seen a rise in the number of white-rumped vultures. The community forestry program, which has seen a third of the country's population directly participate in managing a quarter of the total forested area, has helped the local economies while reducing human-wildlife conflict. The breeding programs coupled with community-assisted military patrols, and a crackdown on poaching and smuggling, has seen poaching of critically endangered tigers and elephants as well as vulnerable rhinos, among others, go down to effectively zero, and their numbers have steadily increased. Nepal has 10 national parks, 3 wildlife reserves, 1 hunting reserve, 3 conservation areas and 11 buffer zones, covering a total area of 28,959.67 square kilometers, 11,181.39 square miles, or 19.67% of the total land area, while 10 wetlands are registered under the Ramsar Convention. Nepal's gross domestic product (GDP) for 2018 was estimated at $28.8 billion. 189, with an annual growth rate calculated at 6.3% in 2018, and expected to reach 7.1% in 2019, Nepal is one of the fastest-growing economies in the world. However, the country ranks 165th in the world in nominal GDP per capita and 162nd in GDP per capita at pp. 193. Nepal has been a member of WTO since the 23rd of April 2004. The 16.8 million worker Nepali labor force is the 37th largest in the world, as of 2017. 195. The primary sector makes up 27.59% of GDP, the secondary sector 14.6%, and the tertiary sector 57.81%. Nepal's foreign exchange remittances of $8.1 billion United States dollars in 2018, the 19th largest in the world and constituting 28.0% of GDP, were contributed to its economy by millions of workers primarily in India, the Middle East and East Asia, almost all of them unskilled laborers. Major agricultural products include cereals, barley, maize, millet, paddy and wheat, oilseed, potato, pulses, sugarcane, jute, tobacco, milk and water buffalo meat. Major industries include tourism, carpets, textiles, cigarettes, cement, brick, as well as small rice, jute, sugar and oilseed mills. Nepal's international trade greatly expanded in 1951 with the establishment of democracy. Liberalization began in 1985 and picked up pace after 1990. By the fiscal year 2016-17, Nepal's foreign trade amounted 1.06 trillion rupees, a 23-fold increase from 45.6 billion rupees in 1990-91. More than 60% of Nepal's trade is with India. Major exports include ready-made garment, carpet, pulses, handicrafts, leather, medicinal herbs, and paper products, which account for 90% of the total. Major imports include various finished and semi-finished goods, raw materials, machinery and equipment, chemical fertilizers, electrical and electronic devices, petroleum products, gold, and ready-made garments. Inflation was at 4.5% in 2019. Foreign exchange reserves were at 9.5 billion United States dollars in July 2019, equivalent to 7.8 months of imports. Nepal has made significant progress in poverty reduction, bringing the population below the international poverty line, $1.90 per person per day, from 15% in 2010 to just 9.3% in 2018, although vulnerability remains extremely high, with almost 32% of the population living on between $1.90 and $3.20 per person per day. Nepal has made improvement in sectors like nutrition, child mortality, electricity, improved flooring and assets. If the progress of reducing poverty continues at this rate, then it is predicted that Nepal will halve the current poverty rate and eradicate it within the next 20 years. The income distribution remains grossly uneven. The agriculture sector is particularly vulnerable as it is highly dependent on the monsoon rains, with just 28% of the arable land being irrigated, as of 2014. Agriculture employs 76% of the workforce, services 18%, and manufacturing and craft-based industry 6%. Private investment, consumption, tourism and agriculture are the principal contributors to economic growth. The government's budget is about $13.71 billion FY 2019-20, but expenditure of infrastructure development budget usually fails to meet the target, and most of the development budget is hurriedly spent in the last months of the fiscal year when the monsoon and hurried work results in subpar quality of construction. The Nepali rupee has been tied to the Indian rupee at an exchange rate of 1.6 for many years. Since the loosening of exchange rate controls in the early 1990s, the black market for foreign exchange has all but disappeared. A long-standing economic agreement underpins a close relationship with India. The country receives foreign aid from the UK, 211, India, Japan, the US, the EU, China, Switzerland, and Scandinavian countries. Per capita income is $1,004. The distribution of wealth among the Nepalese is consistent with that in many developed and developing countries. The highest 10% of households control 39.1% of the national wealth and the lowest 10% control only 2.6%. European Union (EU) 46.13%, the US 17.4%, and Germany 7.1% are its main export partners. The European Union has emerged the largest buyer of Nepali ready-made garments (RMG). Exports to the EU accounted for 46.13% of the country's total garment exports. Nepal's import partners include India 47.5%, the United Arab Emirates 11.2%, China 10.7%, Saudi Arabia 4.9%, and Singapore 4%. Besides having landlocked, rugged geography, few tangible natural resources and poor infrastructure, the ineffective post-1950 government and the long-running civil war are also factors in stunting the country's economic growth and development. Debt bondage, even involving debtors' children, has been a persistent social problem in the Western Hills and the Terai, with an estimated 234,600 people or 0.82% of the population considered as enslaved, by the Global Slavery Index in 2016. Tourism. Main article. Tourism in Nepal. Tourism is one of the largest industries in Nepal, employing more than 1 million people and contributing 7.9% of the total GDP. It is also one of the fastest growing. The number of international visitors crossed 1 million in 2018 for the first time, not counting Indian tourists arriving by land, a 59% increase from 736,000 in the Nepal tourism year 2011. Despite setbacks from the devastating 2015 earthquake, domestic tourism has witnessed a sharp increase since the earthquake, contributing 56% of the total tourism earnings in 2018. Nepal is home to 4 World Heritage Sites: Lumbini, the birthplace of Gautam Buddha; Sagarmatha National Park, which includes Mount Everest, the highest peak on Earth; 7 monuments in the Kathmandu Valley collectively listed as one; and Chitwan National Park. Most of the country's tourism is confined to these destinations, in addition to Pokhara, the Annapurna trekking circuit, and other Himalayan mountains which attract mountaineers and sightseers from around the world. Although Nepal is home to 8 of the 14 8,000ers, all among the 10 tallest mountains in the world, most of Nepal's mountaineering earnings comes from Mount Everest, which is more accessible from the Nepalese side. Despite a vast potential for spiritual and cultural as well as mountaineering and eco-tourism, Nepal's share of foreign tourists visiting South Asia is only about 6%, and tourists spend much less on average, with Nepal sharing only 1.7% of the total tourism earnings of South Asia. The largest contributors of foreign tourists to Nepal are India 16%, China 12%, the United States 8%, Sri Lanka 7%, and the United Kingdom 6%. Nepal's tourism sector officially opened for Westerners in 1951 but remained seriously hindered by a lack of proper planning and investment, continuous political instability. Once a popular final destination at the end of the hippie trail with legalized marijuana and hashish shops in Kathmandu, Nepali tourism was at its lowest during the civil war in the 1990s. Enthused by the upsurge since the peace process began, Nepal aims to welcome 2 million tourists in 2020, double the 2018 figures, via the concerted Visit Nepal 2020 initiative. With a lack of proper facilities for high-end tourism termed the infrastructure bottleneck, the flag carrier in shambles and blacklisted by the developed countries, and with only a small number of popular destinations properly developed and marketed, the goal is considered too ambitious. The homestay tourism, in which cultural and eco-tourists stay as paying guests in the homes of indigenous people, considered a more equitable and viable means of developing the sector, has seen some success. Lumbini and other Hindu and Buddhist pilgrimages including Pashupati Temple, Swayambhu and Buddhanath in Kathmandu, Muktinath in Mustang, and Janakpurdam, the capital of the ancient kingdom of Videha and home to goddess Sita, are among the premier destinations for the development of spiritual, religious and cultural tourism. Diversifying eco-tourism by developing and marketing less popular national parks, trekking routes and mountains are considered essential for the growth of the industry. Foreign employment. The rate of unemployment and underemployment exceeds half of the working-age population. Thus, many Nepali citizens move to other countries in search of work. Destinations include India, the GCC countries, Malaysia, South Korea and Japan. In addition, thousands of well-educated people migrate to developed countries, like the United States, Australia and the UK for higher studies and work, half of whom never return. Most of the workers employed in India, the Middle East and East Asia are unskilled laborers from very poor families. Many of them are swindled by the manpower companies and sent to exploitative employers or war-ridden countries under fraudulent contracts, in breach of government restrictions. In an extreme such case, in 2004, 12 Nepalese migrant workers traveling to an American base in Iraq through a third country, were kidnapped by terrorists and executed on video. Nepalese workers have their passports seized upon arrival by their employer and only returned when they are allowed to return by the employer's consent. Due to Nepal's failure to secure rights for its workers, most Nepalese don't get paid minimum wage, and many are forced to return without being paid all or part of the wages. Many Nepalese work in extremely unsafe conditions. An average of 2 Nepalese workers die each day. The proportion of women participation in foreign employment is increasing. Due to restrictions placed on women, many are forced to depend on traffickers to get out of the country, and end up victims of violence and abuse. Many Nepalese are believed to be working under slavery-like conditions, and Nepal spends billions of rupees rescuing stranded workers, on remuneration to the indebted families of the dead and legal costs for those who get jailed in foreign countries. Foreign employment is the largest source of foreign exchanges for Nepal. Due to millions of missing men, women have been left to attend to the farm and livestock, take care of the families, and raise children, all by themselves. Nepal's population growth rate has remained lower than projected, in part, due to the same. Although millions of families have been raised out of poverty by foreign employment, due to a lack of entrepreneurial skills, the earnings that workers bring back to Nepal are mostly spent on real estate and consumption. Infrastructure. Middle Marsyangdi Hydroelectric Dam. Nepal has significant potential to generate hydropower, which it plans to export across South Asia. The bulk of energy in Nepal comes from biomass 80% and imported fossil fuels 16%. Most of the final energy consumption goes to the residential sector 84%, followed by transport 7% and industry 6%, but the transport and industry sectors have been expanding rapidly in recent years. Except for some lignite deposits, Nepal has no known oil, gas or coal deposits. All commercial fossil fuels, mainly oil, LPG and coal, are imported, spending 129% of the country's total export revenue. Only about 1% of the energy need is fulfilled by electricity. The perennial nature of Nepali rivers and the steep gradient of the country's topography provide ideal conditions for the development of hydroelectric projects. Estimates put Nepal's economically feasible hydropower potential at approximately 42,000 megawatts. However, Nepal has been able to exploit only about 1,100 megawatts. As most of it is generated from run-of-river (ROR) plants, the actual power produced is much lower in the dry winter months when peak demand can reach as high as 1,200 megawatts, and Nepal needs to import as much as 650 megawatts from India to meet the demands. Nepal aims to bring enough hydropower projects into operation by the end of 2019 to go into surplus, but major hydropower projects have continued to suffer delays and setbacks. Nepal's electrification rate, 76%, is comparable to that of other countries in the region, but there is significant disparity between the rural, 72%, and urban, 97%. Areas. The position of the power sector remains unsatisfactory because of high tariffs, high system losses, high generation costs, high overheads, overstaffing, and lower domestic demand. Nepal remains isolated from the world's major land, air and sea transport routes, although, within the country, aviation is in a better state, with 47 airports, 11 of them with paved runways. Flights are frequent and support a sizable traffic. The hilly and mountainous terrain in the northern two-thirds of the country has made the building of roads and other infrastructure difficult and expensive. As of 2016, there were just over 11,890 kilometers, 7,388 miles of paved roads, and 16,100 kilometers, 10,004 miles of unpaved roads, and just 59 kilometers, 37 miles of railway line in the south. As of 2018, all district headquarters except Simacou had been connected to the road network. Most of the rural roads are not operable during the rainy season. Even national highways regularly become inoperable. Nepal depends almost entirely on foreign assistance from countries like China, India and Japan, for building, maintenance and expansion of the road network. The only practical seaport of entry for goods bound for Kathmandu is Kolkata in West Bengal state of India. The national carrier, Nepal Airlines, is in poor shape due to mismanagement and corruption, and has been blacklisted by the EU. Internally, the poor state of development of the road system makes access to markets, schools, and health clinics a challenge. According to the Nepal Telecommunication Authority Ms. August 2019 report, voice telephony subscription rate was at 2.70% of total population for fixed phones and 138.59% for mobile. 98% of all voice telephony was through mobile phones. Similarly, while an estimated 14.52% had access to fixed broadband, an additional 52.71% were accessing the internet using their mobile data subscriptions, almost 15 million of them with 3G or better. The mobile voice telephony and broadband market was dominated by two telecommunications companies, the state-owned Nepal Telecom 55% and the private multinational, Ncell 40%. Of the 21% market share enjoyed by fixed broadband, around 25% was again shared by Nepal Telecom, with the rest going to the private internet service providers. Although there is high disparity in penetration rate between the rural and urban areas, mobile service has reached 75 districts of the country covering 90% of land area, and broadband access is expected to reach 90% of the population by 2020. As of 2019, the state operates 3 television stations as well as national and regional radio stations. There are 117 private TV channels and 736 FM radio stations licensed for operation, at least 314 of them, community radio stations. According to the 2011 census, the percentage of households possessing radio was 50.82%, television 36.45%, cable TV 19.33%, and computer 7.23%. 8. According to the Press Council Nepal classification, as of 2017 of the 833 publications producing original content, 10 national dailies and weeklies are rated A+ class. In 2019, Reporters Without Borders ranked Nepal at 106th in the world in terms of press freedom. So friends, thanks for watching and do not forget to subscribe the channel for the more this kind of videos. Thank you.